Hey guys, how's it going? Today I want to speak about the subject of what is the best moral system? Well, that's a very large word. Technically, it really depends on what kind of society you're in. And also at the same time, you need to understand what is moral. At least to me, the definition of moral is something that is positive, something that is best for society, and that is the right thing to do. It's something that is right, that is correct, that people cannot really say you did a bad thing. What is the moral of the story? What is the positive thing that you get out of it? You see? So that's for me what moral is. And to say that we live in a moral system is very strange sometimes, because to me, if you really think about it, we do live in a society filled with laws and with, we're, at least in America, we're in a sort of democracy, and it is a democracy, and where it's filled with laws, and where normally justice must be served and taken upon in front of a jury, and we got to be looking at the laws, and we got to follow the laws and stuff like that. But a lot of the stuff is not necessarily moral, because really the people who dictated these laws, first of all, a lot of laws are hundreds of years old, so what is moral at the time might not really be moral in today's society. For example, if you're in a time of war or something like that, then you should be able to have a much easier means of getting weapons and stuff like that. But if you have no reason for that, then why are you allowing everyone to have weapons, for example? And that's where the thing that is moral kind of gets out of my understanding of it in some way, because it doesn't really work. It's more like doesn't make sense, really, literally. I mean, think about it this way. If it's not positive to society, then how can it be moral? But then at the same time, when you look at laws, in some way they're man-made, and they have to be constantly changing in order to be relevant. Otherwise, if they're not relevant anymore to today's society, then what are we doing? What are we doing with them? We're actually hindering the way that we're thinking. We're hindering the way that society will respond to it, and we're actually doing something bad. And that's where literally having the best moral situation is almost impossible, because the thing is that democracy, being Republican or Democrat, or basically living in any kind of society, will really depend on how well the society is doing at the time. If, for example, financially, from a standpoint of view, everybody is poor, well, it doesn't really matter the system that you have, everybody will be sad. If you have if you have a society that everybody is prosperous, then, I mean, you would think that probably most of the laws that are getting applied at that time are actually good, and they're making everyone do something moral, because then there's going to be less crime, there's going to be more jobs, and it's kind of like looking at, for example, a communist country. Well, if you look at it on paper, and in a smaller society, in a smaller, if you didn't have millions of people and you were just in a village with 30 people, and you said, okay, we're going to be communists so that everyone is equal and nobody will starve and everybody will have enough food and they will have a house to live in, and they will also be able to have a job, but nobody will be above anybody else. You're like, hey, this is kind of cool. But now take that into a broader society. Now let's go from 30 to 1,000 people. That might still kind of work more or less, because you're going to be able to keep track of who's trying to cheat or not. But then if you go to like hundreds of thousands to millions of people, then it's really hard to keep track of what every person is doing, and then also guaranteeing that you'd be able to provide enough food or whatever, and it gets a bit more difficult. And then also the fact that if you are making everyone live beyond their means so that everybody would get like a castle or something crazy, no, castle's too much, but we'll say like a really nice house, a couple bedrooms and all that stuff, and a really nice car, and everybody's equal in that way, then it might, at least on paper, work. But then the problem is that when it doesn't work for one person, then it's kind of like a domino effect where it starts not working for multiple people, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's the same with even democracies and a lot of the Western countries. The laws are there because they're supposed to help you, but then when there's such a big gap between the rich people, the middle class, and even upper middle class, which almost doesn't exist anymore in today's society, because the thing is that in the olden times, when there were less people, once again, middle class was upper middle class most of the time, and there was less of that lower middle class. But now what's happening is that there's more of the wealthy, super rich people, but then it's combined with almost all of the population living in that country being middle class or lower middle class, and then there's always often a percentage also of the poor class, which offsets a lot of things, but also at the same time keeps jobs as a wanted position as being already elite if you're part of that, because if there's always like a percentage of unemployment, if there's a 1%, even a 1% unemployment, the fact of being in that 99% means that you can have a lower minimum wage, because having a job is not guaranteed, because you could go back into that 1%, and now when it goes to 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, even to like 7% unemployment, then you're getting into really, really bad territories, because that means that being that part of that 92% that actually has a job is harder and harder and harder, and then you could easily be in that 7%. And it looks like it's not a big number, but it actually is. So what is moral? Once again, moral is something that would be positive for the whole society, positive for everyone, and it's also something that you get out of it that is positive, really. And unfortunately, I think for most people, morally speaking, we are good people. I think most people are, for the most part, trying to do good. They're trying to obey within the laws. They're trying to stay, good workers and do what's right and be family people and all that. But then there's that other percentage of people, and again, it's that 5%, that 4%, that are not good, and they will make us want to have locks on our doors, or they will make us want to be careful when we rent a place, or they have to have those credit checks and all that stuff, because that's where the morality comes. And I think it's, again, whenever you're in struggle and you're not getting what you need to as a human being, there's that survival instinct that comes. So whatever you think is moral changes, because to you, that morality is good, because you're doing positive for you, and maybe if you even have a kid or whatever, you're stealing, you're doing because you need to have that survival, and that's the moral thing for you to do, even if it's not moral for everyone else. And that's why sometimes, and I think more so than not, rich people will do the moral thing that is good for them and make higher taxes and stuff like that to protect their peers. but not the middle class. So you see, it's all relevant. Okay, that's it. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.